Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warmer from the above, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. As in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by one of our good friends, Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be chatting with him about what he looks at for handicapping these next few weeks, because as we know, there's a lot of students that are on Christmas break. Hey, some of you might be on vacation from your job as well for the rest of the year for a week or so for Christmas, and if you are that lucky, I do appreciate you listening into this podcast. Hopefully we can make you some money in the interim there, and hopefully you are enjoying the holidays, as we are now in the holiday season, depending upon which one you celebrate, and we welcome all holidays here on this podcast, and we're in the holiday of trying to make you guys money, which is why we get on great guests like Rob. We're going to be taking a look at what we're going to be getting on the Thursday card, some of the teams that you're starting to feel a little bit bullish/bearish on, the landscape of the SEC, the Big East, and so much more, so we're going to have some fun there. And then in the final segment, gonna get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some make shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways to be able to those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GDN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Not only was this the game of the night on Wednesday, this is one of the best games that we've seen all college basketball season long. Oklahoma 87-86 winners over Michigan. Jeremiah Fears with a 4-point play with mere seconds remaining to ice it away for Oklahoma. Oklahoma probably did not deserve to win this game, as they lose the turnover battle 13-10. They lose the rebound battle 37-32, but they were 12 of 25 from 3 on this night. And Michigan, an icy cold 4 of 28 from distance. They did make do by going 22 of 26 at the free throw line. Vladislav Golden a double-double, 26 points, 10 rebounds. Danny Wolf a double-double, 15 points, 10 rebounds. But for Oklahoma, Mr. Fierce, while he did have 5 turnovers in this game, he had that massive 4-point play. He goes 3 of 4 from 3, 30 points. Duke Miles was able to throw in their 17 points, and Oklahoma finds a way, somehow, some way, to be able to get the job done. This team finds a way to be able to get the job done outright on the money line, but they were laying well north of 20 points, and they did not cover that. Alabama got all that they wanted, and then some from North Dakota, 97-90. The same North Dakota team that lost by north of 20 points a few weeks ago to Utah Valley. So, I mean, that goes to show you how crazy college basketball can be, as Trayson Eaglestaff, 40 points, goes 8 of 18 from 3-point range. North Dakota as a whole, they go 17 of 41 from the outside. And Alabama, I mean, they weren't awful. They weren't amazing. They go 11 of 34 from 3-point range. Off the bench, you were able to get 16 points out of LeBron Fillin, and you were able to get 23 points, 10 rebounds out of Ground Nelson. He was back in his native North Dakota State as he began with the North Dakota State Bison. But for Alabama, they do find a way to persevere. As for North Dakota, they do lose that rebound battle 44-35. You also saw a harebrained game. Well, really, you saw a lot of harebrained games, but you saw the Houston Cougars be able to get the job done against Toledo. This closed in some places at a 29.5, so it's dependent upon your number. Opens up 28.5, closes 29.5. Houston 78-49 winners for this Toledo team. They're not looking like the team of old, and for Houston, a little bit of a 3-point shooting cooler in this one, 4 of 24 from distance, but they were able to get 16 big points off the bench from Terrence Arnoux. And then for Toledo, they shoot 29.5% from the floor. They lose a turnover battle 14-12, and they lost a rebound battle 50-29. And Houston grabbed those 50 rebounds with only one player getting more than 5 in Arnoux. You had a lot of guys put in there just 4 and 5 boards apiece. So good team effort there. No cover for Memphis, but they go on the road and they do get the job done against Virginia. This by a count of 64-62. for Memphis. Cold from three-point range, 5 of 23 from distance, but they won the rebound battle, 38-31. Dane Danger off the bench, 12 points, 11 boards, pair of blocks for Virginia. You did have Elijah Saunders chip in there 15 points, and he goes 3 of 4 from 3. Rest of the team outside of him when I believe 3 of 15 from distance. But Virginia, even though they won the turnover battle 12-11, wasn't quite enough from Isaac McNeely, only 5 points in this one. So Memphis finds a way to get the job done. For UConn, it's been up and down for them. They get the win, so they're still undefeated on the mainland, but they needed overtime, 94-89 the final. Xavier, first game without Zach Fremantle. I don't know if they can bank on going 13 of 24 from three-point range all the time, but Dante Maddox off the bench, 22 points, 5 of 9 from three-point range. UConn, they go 8 of 24 from distance, so nothing great, nothing terrible, but they won this game by going 20 of 21 at the free throw line. Xavier not shabby either, 18 of 21 at the free throw line. You're going to take that every day of the week, but you had for UConn, every starter get at least 12 points in this one. Hassan Diarra, he was able to put in there 12 points, 11 assists, and you had Terrace Reed throwing there 20 points, 13 rebounds of his own. So UConn finds a way to be able to stave that off, and then out there in the Big East, it felt like there were a lot of underdogs that were cashing as Marquette. They get the win, but no cover, 80-70 the final, as they go 6 of 30 from three-point range. But Cam Jones, he was only able to go 1 of 7 from 3, 24 shot attempts, 23 points, but just 1 turnover, 5 assists, so he did a lot of other things for a Marquette team with just 2 turnovers in this game compared to the 14 of Butler. So even though Marquette was cold on this day, the fact that they won the turnover battle by 12 was able to win the day for them, as Jalen Telford, 16 points, 10 rebounds by himself, though. He had 3 turnovers, and Marquette as a team, they had 2. So that was a little bit of an issue there. And for Gonzaga, they absolutely take it to Nichols, 102-72. This was a line of 35.5, so got up a little bit too lofty, but for Gonzaga, they were able to get Braden Huff off the bench to huff and puff and blow down the house of Nichols. 25 points, 6 rebounds. Ben Gregg, a double-double, great name, 20 points, 20 rebounds. And Graham Ike, he's been all over the place, 18 minutes, 20 points, pretty efficient effort there. And Ryan Nembhard, 5 turnovers, a little bit uncharacteristic of him, but he was able to throw in there 10 assists along the way as well. And then you had underdogs that were really barking early on in the day, as you had 3-day games, Abilene Christian versus East Texas A&M, Lemoyne Dartmouth, and Albany versus Sacred Heart. All 3 games saw the underdog win outright on the money line. East Texas A&M, I believe, was the biggest of all of them at 9.5. You were able to get right around about like plus 360 or so on the money line, 68-67. They take down Abilene Christian. Went just 2 of 10 from 3, but 26 out of 37 at the free throw line. The foul differential was 25-15. So that was big for a East Texas A&M team whose top 2 scorers came off the bench. As a matter of fact, they got other 68 points, 15 of them from their starters, which I still find to be absolutely hilarious. So there was that. And this game did not have a betting line on it because it involved a non-Division I team, but UW Green Bay absolutely toilet bowls a game against Michigan Tech. Michigan Tech, a D2 university. I know a few friends that got scholarship offers in high school from Michigan Tech. I'm from the great state of Wisconsin, old Hortonville. 72-70 the final. Marcus Tomczyk, 30 points. I know someone with the last name Tomczyk, so that was tremendous. And man, oh man, if you're Doug Gottlieb right now, you have to be rethinking your decision to do a radio show and also be coaching up a Green Bay basketball team. And, oh, by the way, he missed his afternoon radio show after this game. So there was that aspect of things, and yeah, I have no idea what's going on with this UW Green Bay team, considering the fact that Anthony Roy did not play in this game as well. That is the second top scorer in all of college basketball, so yeah, that's a little bit less than savory to say the least. This was also less than savory. Creighton, they got completely blown out by Georgetown, a Georgetown team that's looking pretty solid, by the way, for Georgetown. 81-57. They get the job done in this one, and Georgetown now 6-5 against the spread. As for Creighton, they do go 12 of 33 from 3-point range. Ryan Kalkbrenner, though, not too much of a show in this game. 10 points, 4 boards. He did give the team a trio of blocks, but Georgetown 10 of 16 from 3-point range. Jaden Epps, Micah Peavy, a combined 41 points. So they are getting online, and they're getting things all up and running, and also getting things all up and running with regards to trying to be able to cover some numbers as Manhattan. They take down Wagner 80-66. Wagner have been really one of your worst offenses in all of college basketball, but we were able to get get some points on this day. So Wagner, who has played, I believe, only now one over. This was their first over of the season. They got one on the board, but Wesley Robinson, 20 big points for Manhattan. So yay, verily there. Austin P, the Governators, they have a 1 over to 9 unders. That is tied with Kansas for the top under mark in all of college basketball, and it was another underwhelming night for them. They lose to Ohio by a count of 78-58. This was a total of 141.5 on the close, and for Austin P, they had a stretch of like 10 minutes where I believe that they scored 4 points. So that was not great for the old Governators, to say the least. They do not get the job done there. Furman has actually been a good under team as well. They were playing a non-D1 school, so nothing was listed up there for them on the night, but one of your top over teams in all of college basketball has been Indiana State, and for the Sycamores, they do get the job done against Murray State, 84-74 the final for Indiana State. 9 overs to just 1 under thus far this season. Going back to Manhattan, 8 overs to 1 under for them thus far this season as well. This is a total of 152.5. That goes over, and Samaje Teal put Indiana State on his back as he goes 4 of 7 from 3. Team as a whole 9 of 20 from distance. Teal throws in their 26 points. Despite the fact that Murray State wins the turnover battle 16-11, they lose this game because they also lost the rebound battle 35-27, and for Murray State, just 6 of 23 from 3-point range out of them. So we saw them be able to get the job done. On top of that, if you're looking at another solid team to the over, that would be Portland State. They've played 7 overs to 2 unders thus far this season, and for Portland State, they go out there and they just completely demolish Pacific, this by a count of 81-75. This final score is misleading because at one point Portland State got up in this game 43-24. Pacific makes it very interesting late, but Portland State, they pull it out as underdogs outright on the money line as Cole Farrell. He's able to throw in their 18 points for this Portland State team. They've been absolutely running it and gunning it with Q Myers. 11 assists, 2 turnovers. He has been rock solid in that backcourt. And for Pacific, they shoot 34.5% from the floor. So a little bit less than savory there. If you're looking at just some other eclectic games that we saw in college basketball on Wednesday in the Big Ten, you saw Washington get the job done against Washington State 89-73. It's been an up and down season for Washington, but it does appear as though the backcourt starting to get into form. DJ Turn It Up Davis, 21 points. He goes 3 of 7 from 3. Washington 10 of 21 from 3-point range, and Washington State still without Cedric Coward, so that is not helping them out, to say the least. You also saw USC absolutely take it to CSUN, Cal State Northridge 90-69. Final. USC was really having a tough time covering games to begin the season, but now they appear to be getting online. Arizona back to 500. That's very strange to say. They take down Sam Amford 96-64. Samford has been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball, but this game falls under because they could not get a lot going in this game in terms of the rebounding aspect of things. They lose the rebound battle 42-23, and for Arizona, they had 23 points out of Caleb Love in this one to be able to lead the way, and being able to lead the way to a cover. How about Canisius? They have been rough thus far this season, 72-60. Loyola Chicago, they get the outright win, but Canisius, they're able to get a cover, and Tarleton State, it's been a rough season for them. They scared the heck out of Oklahoma State. They had the lead at the half. They lose this game 66-61. Back-to-back covers for them. They now have DeTwan Grimes, the transfer from Baylor, in the mix. They were a 20.5-point underdog. They cover this game rather easily, and for Louisiana, they get cover number 2 of the season. They are now 2-9 against the spread as they get the job done all right against Appalachian State 68-62. Been a little bit of a rough year for Appalachian State thus far as they go 4 of 18 from 3-point range, and they were unable to win the rebound battle 36-31. They lost in that aspect of things, and typically when this team loses a rebound battle, things are not going to be going too well for them. And you also saw the St. Louis Billikens take another loss. It has been a rough season for them thus far as they lose to Wofford 74-71. You did have Robbie Avila on this one, supplies 16 points, 8 assists, but again, the turnovers have been a little bit of an issue. You did have 3 turnovers in this game. St. Louis as a whole only 7 turnovers, but Wofford only 4 turnovers, and Corey Tripp, well, he had them a trip, and he had 24 points in this one in South Florida. They are now 2-9 against the spread thus far this season, and for our good friends in South Florida, they lose outright to Bethune-Cookman. It's been a very trying season for them, and it's only getting more and more trying as they lose this game by a count of 77-69 to Bethune-Cookman, who should have had a cover a few days ago against Virginia as well, but 7-16 from three-point range for Bethune-Cookman, and they do have themselves some guys that have been stars, like Brayon Freeman was a top scorer at Rhode Island a few seasons ago. He supplies 18 points in that one. Alabama A&M, they are now 1-7 against the spread, by the way. They lose to UAB 96-67. UAB blew that 27-point lead over the weekend. They bounced back by going 7 of 18 from three-point range in this one, so a little bit of a better performance. And if you're looking at what we're getting in college basketball right now, oh, by the way, Mississippi Valley State, they do not cover their game against North Texas. This was a hilarious total of about a 122.5, just barely goes over at Mississippi Valley State. They do not cover 36.5. They lose 83-42. Absolutely the epitome of brutality. And what else has been brutal is if you've been taking a whole bunch of unders as far this season, as right now the overs have the lead on unders. 911 overs to 901 unders. Meanwhile, underdogs have been having themselves a season hitting at a little bit over 51%, 925, 886, and 27 against the spread. If you're looking at the last 7 days in college basketball, despite what we saw in the early slate of games, it's been favorites that have really been controlling things the last 7 days. 123, 110, and 3 against the spread, while the unders have been having themselves a nice run of things over the last 7 days. 119 unders to 113 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Wednesday. Now let's turn it forward to Thursday and look at the landscape of this great sport with our good friend Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bets show next, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the UC Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VC Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Rob Donaldson aboard. He does such great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. Also does a great job on the college football front as well, as I know that bowl season, the college football playoff, that is now coming upon us as well. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RobDFB. And Rob, it's always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, always fun to talk college hoops with you, and we've certainly got a lot of great games coming up on deck, and we've had a lot of great games this week, and a lot of takeaways just in general from the season so far.
Yeah, we certainly have been, and how do you take a look at this next week or two in college basketball? Because we've got a lot of kids off campus, so that causes for a lot of these games to be very wonky, and I do feel like this time of year we could tend to see some strange results, because I still remember this one, since you're a man from the great state of Iowa, when Eastern Illinois was north of a 30-point underdog 2 seasons ago and won that game outright on the money line. I still will never forget that. It's the only time in my life I bet north of a 30-point favorite that lost outright. But that said, how do you take a look at this time of year? Because like I was just alluding to, we could get some very strange results.
Yeah, and to your point, I knew exactly where you were going with that one, because I was even at that game, witnessing it live in front of me, and it was not even close. It was a blowout through the end, both sides of the half. And yeah, to your point, that is one of the things you got to measure, because if you see one of these, quote unquote, maybe trappy looking lines of maybe a team getting +4.5 or +3.5 or +2.5 against the other team that is clearly the superior team, but the team that's catching points is at home, sometimes you might be willing to, take that chance and take that underdog if it's, a full audience and going to be up and ramped up for the game. But you don't really know. You can't really gauge attendance until actually the game tips off, and for that reason, I am kind of staying away from some of these more trappy lines the next couple weeks.
Yep, it is going to be really interesting to see what we get with that regard. And I do think that with regards to home court advantage, it does need to be, shall we say, tempered down a little bit more, just because what we were referring to, a lot of kids are not going to be on campus. Do you do the same thing with regards to your handicapping, or do you keep things relatively status quo with that regard?
I am pretty status quo when it comes to my angles this time of year. I don't want to get caught up too much in the noise. There's a lot of different angles that you can take, like, this week is a little bit different than the last week, and you can measure those sorts of things. But I feel like if you get too caught up in that, it can really distract from, your ultimate handicap. And for that reason, I do just try to keep it where it's at and level-headed throughout this entire little stretch here.
Absolutely. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I do think that this time of year as well, it's interesting to look at the hierarchy of the conferences. And if anyone wants to say that there's a conference other than the SEC that is the best in all of college basketball, I don't know what you're doing there, but That said, how have you taken a look at the last few weeks? Because I think that SEC conference play, when that gets started up, it's going to be oh so interesting. But right now we're seeing in Big East conference play, a lot of equals out there. The Big Ten, as we both know, it feels like it's a little bit of a hodgepodge, and Saints really the SEC. And I will say that there's a clear top and a clear bottom in the Big 12 as well, but it feels like there's a lot of wide open conferences this year.
And one of the conferences that had a big spotlight and has had a big spotlight for a number of years because it does have a lot of good programs within it. FAU is certainly added in there now, but American, the AAC, and for whatever reason, this conference really hasn't lived up to the billing. You've had a, interesting story with Wichita State looking pretty hot out the gate with Paul Mills. And obviously Memphis and Penny Hardaway had that big upset over UConn and then Michigan State at Maui. And, those were sort of the highlights, but Tulane has fallen off the cliff. FAU is not where they normally are. South Florida, unfortunately is dealing with that scenario as well. And that league feels like a hodgepodge. And to your point, you look at the A10, you look at the Big East, you look at the ACC, there's a lot of conferences where it just feels like a mosh pit of teams all in the same kind of tier. And for that reason, if you're somebody that wants to hitch your wagon to one of those teams in the middle, or if you want to place a futures bet just on the conference in general, I feel like right now you can find a ton of value for those sorts of things.
I absolutely love myself a good mosh pit, so that's always fun to take a look at. I feel like we've got that out there in the Big East as well, because with the Big East, certainly a team like UConn is above Seton Hall. There's no question about that, but there used to be a very clear top and a very clear bottom. We saw UConn yesterday get all that they wanted, and then some from a Xavier team that is going to be without Zach Freemantle for quite some time. Georgetown, they were able to take it to Creighton yesterday. Right now, you've got, like I was referring to in Seton Hall, who looks absolutely awful, but I am Villanova has been able to rise up a little bit as well. What do you make out of the Big East? Because it feels like we've got a lot of equals in that conference as well.
Yeah, and you want to know what the team that nobody wants to really address that is making absolute waves and potentially playing some of the best basketball in the entire country right now. It's Villanova. Early in the season, they got smoked by Columbia. They had some really bad outings where it just felt like Cal Neptune's days weren't even going to make it until conference play. But man, winners of the 5 in a row, some good wins, really some respectable wins in that 5-game stretch as well. And if you're looking at the middle of these sort of mosh pit-esque, conferences, I feel like the Big East is right there. And heck, when you look up at the standings and you look at maybe just the win percentage early on, you see a DePaul, you see a St. John's, you see a Georgetown, and Villanova's right there in the mix. If you're telling me that there's a solidified team that's spearheading the conference like in normal years where it was just Marquette and UConn, I'm not believing that. And Creighton's off the radar as well in this season, and for that reason, yeah, I think it's wide open.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get in Big East Conference play with a Georgetown team that all of a sudden has been rise up, a DePaul team that all of a sudden doesn't look completely sorry. So that's very nice to be seeing, to say the least. And there are conferences out there that are near and dear to our hearts that we're going to be seeing in action on Thursdays. Rob Donaldson, who does great work with you, Rob's Best Bets show, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. That'd be the Ohio Valley Conference along with the Horizon League. And what do you make out of these two conferences? Because I do think that there's going to be some fun intrigue with both of these. And with the Ohio Valley Conference, my goodness, that is going to be a tough one to parse out, to say the least. But I do think that those conference games are going to have a lot of value, because not very often would you get conference play on December 19th, but that's exactly what we're going to be getting at both of those conferences on Thursday.
Yeah, and unfortunately with the OVC, the losses of, Murray State and Belmont over the past few years has sort of tanked the high upside of that conference. And even you've seen, Morehead State sort of suffer from that as well, where although they're still the team in that league more often than not, it doesn't kind of feel like they're the same Morehead State team that it has that influx of talent every year. And, to your point, you look at the Horizon, I feel like that's the conference that is sort of budding on breaking through to a next higher level, because there's some really great basketball being played there. There's a lot of great head coaches in that league as well, minus Doug Gottlieb, who lost to Michigan Tech. But when you look across the board, you're seeing Detroit Mercy playing better. You're seeing IU Indy playing better. And even a team like Northern Kentucky and Cleveland State and Youngstown State have been a fixture over the past few years, are sort of in that middle right now. And I think that's just a testament to how good this league could potentially emerge to be.
And do you think that there might be more schools that are strayed away from trying to reinvent the wheel with the hiring process because we were wondering how this Doug Gottlieb situation was going to go. And I felt like he should have probably been handed a pink slip on his way off the court with his team losing to a Division II school. And I think that it's become very clear that much like the Payne experiment at Louisville did not work out, this UW Green Bay experiment could not be going any worse.
And I think it's just a testament to you can't have that level of arrogance no matter which program you're coaching at, because you can't just say, oh, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to host a show every single day of the week, and then I'm going to get ready and get my team prepared for Michigan Tech and IUND on a nightly basis and manage these human beings that are out there playing for you and committing to your university. I just always felt like it was sort of a spit in the face to a lot of the great head coaches that, you look at like a Ben McCollum, right? He was coaching in D2 levels and now he's coaching 10-0 Drake. There are a lot of Ben McCollums and Josh Schertzes out there. And, even Cal Poly hired from the D2 level and was looking fantastic in the early going. There's a lot of guys that deserve a shot that haven't gotten it for decades, and the fact that Doug Gottlieb goes from a talk show, a bad talk show, and then goes on to coach Green Bay and is doing this bad, it fires me up a little bit, boils my blood.
Not just goes to one, still hosts a talk show. I'm not going to say good, bad, or indifferent. I will let the people make that determination, but he does a talk show, and he also coaches a college basketball team, and there are coaches out there that do like their 1 hour a week weekly coaches show and everything like that. They aren't commenting on Bill Belichick going to North Carolina like he's doing as well. There's a big difference between doing your 30-minute, 1 hour a week show from your local bar where you're talking about the team and you're giving a win one for the Gipper speech essentially for your fan base and diving into Monday Night Football. And that dives into something as well. Doug Gottlieb has had to make sure that he doesn't give out any bets as well, because then that leads to a different rabbit hole as well. So there's been a lot that has been going down there, and none of it has been really good for UW Green Bay, for Doug Gottlieb, or for the unfortunate kids that are currently at UW Green Bay. So it's not been great, but what is great is getting Rob Donaldson aboard right here on Cuss Soups, and we do have some intrigue with regards to Thursday. We just alluded to it in the Horizon League, and I do want to get your thoughts on this game. Two teams that are coached by people that don't host talk shows, Oakland and Cleveland State, with Cleveland State a 1 to 1.5 point favorite and a total of 128.5. How do you look at this sort of a game? Because I just look at this game, and for Oakland, they've been actually over the last few years a little bit better on the road rather than at home. But I look at these sorts of spots with these teams like in Oakland coming off of their interstate rivalry against Michigan, and I always believe that these teams have a little bit less in the tank. It's a big reason why I faded Seton Hall a few days ago against Villanova. They had a big time rivalry matchup over the weekend against Rutgers. I thought that they would have a little bit less for the game after, and that's sort of an angle that I do take this time of year with these teams, that they've got that big interstate rivalry in their next game, just having a little bit less, shall we say, oomph for that game.
I actually agree with you for the most part. I do think in regards to this game, Oakland-Cleveland State, I wouldn't be so keen to fade Oakland just because of where their record is currently sitting. And, last year we saw Oakland do really well in the non-conference and take a really shiny looking record into conference play. But now it's sort of like they have something to prove. They are having to build. And now conference play is starting. You just had your game against Michigan State where you looked respectable. I think that could potentially be a building block. So I don't have a strong play in that game, but I wouldn't be overly keen to bet against Oakland in this one.
With Oakland and Cleveland State, man, both of these teams have left a lot to be desired on offense. Neither team shooting above 28.5% from three-point range, so I have to feel like there's nowhere to go but up from there. And as crazy as it is to say, it looks like the best teams that we're going to be getting in action on Thursday, once again, are going to be SEC schools. As we've got Texas, who's going to be battling New Orleans as 34-plus point favorites. Georgia right now about a 28 or so point favorite against Buffalo. Is there anything that you want to see out of these two schools, or are these just games that in general, with regards to both of these teams, are pretty much tune-ups for what is going to be a very brutal gauntlet out there in SEC play?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to actually watch this game for Georgia, just because I want to see them keep the foot on the gas and not get complacent. It's obviously been a fantastic start. I could even make the argument that they should be 10-0 right now. For that reason, just don't get consumed by the noise and the buzz that's starting to swirl around the program. Keep your pedal to the metal and kind of take it like South Carolina was last year, where every game was sort of like an elimination game for them, it felt like, and they just went out there and just kept on winning. So that's what I want to see from Georgia. in regards to Texas, I feel like this is going to be one of those games that they just kind of stomp all over New Orleans. This feels like a little bit of a front runner type team because of how guard heavy and ISO heavy and volatile that their play style is. And I'm still not even sure what to think of Rodney Terry. So, against, bigger competition, I wouldn't be so keen to back Texas, but against these inferior opponents, I'm all over them.
Yeah, with regards to the Texas versus New Orleans game as well, I take a look at that total of a 149. With Texas getting back Trayvon Mark, I think that they should be putting up some big numbers offensively in New Orleans. They always give it up against your Iowa Hawkeyes. They gave up north of 100 points. That game somehow, some way stayed under because New Orleans couldn't get to 60 themselves, which I'm a little bit salty about. But you know what? I do think that Texas going to be able to put up a big, giant number there. And anything else for this Thursday card that you're taking a look at?
I think this is the game of the night between UC Irvine and Belmont. This is one of those games that it's not an in-conference rivalry, but it's two mid-major programs that have a little bit of national respect, or I should say a lot of national respect, I would say. And just in terms of how their seasons are going so far, Belmont is having a resurgence here, which I was really hoping that they would, because it's been kind of, a little bit in the middle the last few. And UC Irvine, I think, has a great squad. They're coming off a loss against Oregon State. It's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back. And I am keen to back UC Irvine in this matchup. I think they're the better team. I do think they're going to respond positively off a loss against Oregon State last time out.
Yep, I think so as well. This UC Irvine team, number one in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis on the road. So they've been stout there. And another man that always excels when he hits the road and hits the road to this podcast is you, my friend, Rob. You do such an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow all of your work on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, Greg, always love hopping on with you and talking ball. And for those who want to follow my bets on a nightly basis, you can do so at RobDFB on Twitter/X, and also on my YouTube channel. Rob Donaldson just posted a futures video for college football over there. And as always, Greg, really appreciate having me on.
It is always great to be able to get Rob aboard. He does such an amazing job taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. And every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Cusco Soups, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shot. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Cusco Soups with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Thursday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1. Going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger conference games first, and then the games involving the Atlantic Sun, the Big South, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland Conference, also the NEC, the Northeast Conference. Those are going to be the games. They're going to be at the bottom, and we do have these games going in pretty much time order with regards to the way that they are broken down as well, though there are going to be a few, shall we say, games that might be flipped around just a little bit because sometimes those tip times, they do move. But that said, let's get things started with 7:31, 7:32 on the card. It is Buffalo. They're on the road against Georgia. Georgia is a favorite of between 28 to 28.5 points. Total on this game is 148.5 to 149. I feel like Georgia should be a sizable favorite. Could only set my number at a 27.5. So now that we've gotten to a 28, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Buffalo. Again, home court advantage does get a little bit diminished this time of year, and I love what I'm seeing out of this Georgia team, a top 30 team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been able to get a whole heck of a lot of production of one of the more underrated freshmen in all of college basketball in Asa Newell, who's been able to supply the team with 16 points. He's able to give you some nice versatility with a block, a steal, 6.5 rebounds per game. Really doesn't shoot it well from three. Georgia overall, they're shooting about 34% from the outside. That's been more Dakota LeFew, who's been that main three-point shooter for this team. He's come in from Mount St. Mary's, 3 assists, 12.5 points per game, and for Georgia. The one issue that I currently do have with this team, the turnovers. They are turning the ball over about 14 times per game. You've got Silas Emery along Tyron Lawrence combining for about 6.5 assists per game, but they do get a little bit loose with it. Meanwhile, Ty Dunn, he certainly does have that issue for Buffalo, as Buffalo, they're turning the ball over 15 times per game, and Dunn, 4.9 turnovers per game. If he's not leading all of college basketball in terms of turnovers per game, he's not far from the lead, but he has been a nice guy to be able to elevate a Buffalo team that they just needed anything to go their way after how things went last season. 12 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds per game, so he's been able to uplift this unit. You don't have a ton down low now. A Bachelor who comes on over from Maryland. He's got right around 6'8" size. He's supplying the team with 6.5 rebounds per game. He and Dunn are the lone two guys on the roster that are right now giving you 4+ rebounds per game. Could use a little bit more of the freshman and Ben Michaels, who's been able to come on strong. 4 boards, about a steal per game. He's been able to supply the team with a little bit of this and that recently, but I did think that with Buffalo, having Ryan Sable in the backcourt, giving you 18 points, shooting 45.5% from 3-point, that's going to be just enough for Buffalo to remain lively in this one. For Buffalo, it's better than where they were last year. They're 5-5 this season. We've seen them lose by like 23 against Penn State. They actually held in there against St. Bonaventure as well, so I do think that this summer's got a little bit out of whack. Did set my total 147.5. Both of these teams turning the ball over a little bit too much for me to take it over, so in on the under and the points with Buffalo. 733, 734 on the betting board. This will be a game that right up. Oakland on the road against Cleveland State. Cleveland State, a 1 to 1.5 point home underdog, totals between 128 to 128.5, and I'm writing up Cleveland State. I set them as a 3.5 point favorite. I do like them on the money line. For Oakland, they had a big rivalry game a few days ago against Michigan State, and you have to wonder how much that took out of them. Meanwhile, you've got a Cleveland State unit that's been pretty rock solid with regards to their defense. A top 145 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You need this team to be able to pick it up from 3-point range, but legitimately both of these teams shooting less than 29% from 3-point range this season. You've got Tevin Smith in the backcourt of Cleveland State giving you a steal and a half, block and a half, 12.5 points per game, so it's been a nice stat sheet stuff, and it does feel like their point guard in Abri Madiba, who I remember was very good at doling out the ball in Coastal Carolina a few seasons ago. He's starting to find his footing and combined 12 assists to 2 turnovers in the last 2 games. One of those was a big win over UW Green Bay, which, well, we're seeing what's happening with UW Green Bay right now, but you've got Dylan Arnett, who might be the best low post player in this game as well. 9 points, about 8 rebounds per game, going up against an Oakland team that has Tabaru Navarura. Hopefully I said that correctly. He's been able to supply the team with right in that neighborhood about 7.5 or so rebounds per game. Alan David Mbeka, who comes over from UMKC, he's able to supply the team with 13 points per game as well, but with Oakland, you're used to seeing this team have a really good backcourt, and this is a bit of a rivalry matchup as Jason Woodridge, who's been able to supply this Oakland team with about 4.5 boards, 6.5 points per game. He was at Cleveland State last season, so I don't think that there's going to be any love lost between those two, but for Woodridge, he was always a career about 34% 3-point shooter at Cleveland State. Now here at Oakland, he's shooting 16% from 3-point range, so that has not been great for Oakland to say the least. Oakland does a better job of taking care of the ball with only about 10.5 turnovers per game, but they are outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've broken the 66-point plateau against one Division I team thus far this season. And for Cleveland State, while the offense hasn't been great, they have been able to get to at least 67 points in each of the last 4 games, so it's a good old situation if something's got to give. I think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog. I set my total at 125.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be writing up Cleveland State, as I do think that they should be the favorite. I like them on the money line. 735, 736 on the betting board. UT Martin is on the road against Morehead State. Morehead State does find themselves as 5.5 point favorites. Total on this game between 146 to 146.5, and with Morehead State, I set them as just 2.5 point favorites. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with UT Martin. For Morehead State, I do think that they're going to have a little bit of a tough time on the glass, and that has been one of the few redeeming qualities with this UT Martin team. UT Martin has very much went with the international men of mystery. They hire on the coach in Jeremy Ballard, who was over at, I believe it was Southeast Florida. I might be getting my directional Florida wrong, but he was at the NAIA level, has brought up a lot of guys with him. And for UT Martin, they're in the top 200 in the country with regards to their rebound percentage. This is a Morehead State team that's right around about 177th themselves, so both of these teams should be able to do a solid job with that regard, and both of these teams really struggling on offense. Both of these teams outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For Morehead State, guy that they're really looking to for a bit of everything is Kenny White, who has been around the block here in the Ohio Valley Conference. He's been at Tennessee Tech. He's been at Morehead St, 13.5 points, 5.5 boards, shooting 39% from 3 for a team that shoots 30.5% from 3, but this is going to be critical in a perhaps cover spot as well. Morehead St shoots 64% at the free throw line. That is absolutely brutal. Meanwhile, you've got 2 top flight scorers for this UT Martin team that I think is going to be able to help them out. Josu Gurion has been able to give you 17 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and Terrence Gunyard has been able to supply the team with about 15 points, 2.5 assists per game. Neither of these guys are really amazing with regards to being able to dole out the ball or anything like that. Neither gives you north of 2.5 assists per game, but Gurion has been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. And then down low, you've been able to get 8.5 boards out of Vladimir Soldizde. He's been able to do a nice job in the post. And flip side for this Morehead St team, you do have quite a bit of size on this roster, with the main guy being Deontay Miles, who stands 7 feet tall. The problem is, for Deontay Miles, he's been banged up throughout the season. Did return in their last game against a non-D1 team, so he should be good to go in this one. At 7 feet tall, he's able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game, so that does help them out quite a bit. And then you've been able to get a bit out of the backcourt in Tyler Brailsford, who's been able to give you 9 points, 4 boards, 2 assists per game. A little bit of versatility, but so he's been a career mid-30s three-point shooter. This year shooting 24% from the outside, and both of these teams I think are going to be relatively even up on the glass. I think that UT Martin has just a little bit more star firepower to be able to hold in this game. And again, if Morehead St is in a cover spot, their bad free throw shooting, I think is going to be very costly. I did set my total at a 138.5. Here at a 146.5. I think that this total is just way too high. I'm going to be writing up this game in some form or capacity. I'm trying to determine if I write up the points or if I write up the under, but I'm going to be willing to take those points with UT Martin, and I'm in on this total under. 737, 738 on the betting board. It is Belmont, and they play UC Irvine. Zot, the Anteaters are 3 to 3.5 point road favorites, so it's between 152.5 to a 153, and it's a total of 148.5. I do like the under for UC Irvine, one of the most dominant defenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball, because they do a nice job of being able to manhandle the glass. For this UC Irvine team, just so many guys with so much versatility and size, they're able to all do a nice job, be able to crash down on the boards. For UC Irvine right now, 26th in the country overall with regards to their rebound percentage. If you look at just games played away from home, though, they're actually in the top 12 with regards to rebound rate. And if you take a look at points allowed on a per possession basis for this UC Irvine team, number 1 in the country on the road. They face off against the Belmont team as looking to run it and gun it, but with Belmont, what they do on offense, they leave to be desired on defense. I know they have been outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've got just a lot of size that they're going to need to match up with. As for this Belmont unit, you've been able to get quite a bit out of the backcourt in Carter Witt, who's been able to give you double figures. He's throwing out 4.5 assists per game. Also does turn the ball over about 3 times per contest as well, for a Belmont team that is shooting 38% from 3-point range. And I like the 6'9" combo player Jonathan Pierre. He was a part of that Nova Southeastern team that 2 years ago won the Division II national title, and he has stepped in and he's been able to give the team a lot of production with 13 plus points in 3 of the last 5 games. At 6'9", he's shooting 40% from 3-point range, and then he's been able to get really good outside shooting. Tyler Lundblade, who he's come in and he's given the team 12 points, and he's shooting 50.5% from 3-point range. But what comes up must come down, and for UC Irvine, I was wondering how they'd be replacing Pierre Cockrell in the backcourt, and Justin Owen, he has been the answer. 11.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. He has been amazing in the backcourt. And then the 7-footer from Germany, and Bent Lutken, 14.5 points, 8.5 boards, block per contest, shooting 44% from 3. For Irvine, they do get a little bit loose with the ball, the 13.5 turnovers per game. That is a little bit of an issue, but Andre 3000 Henry, Miles Shea, these guys have been able to combine for 16 points per game. They do a rock solid job of being able to guard around the perimeter. And then Devin Tillis at 6'6", good versatility, double figure amount of points, 7.5 boards. He's able to let it fly from 3-point range. Belmont, not a team that necessarily forces a lot of turnovers, and this Belmont team has given up 74 plus points in each of their last 4 games, and it's a situation of something's got to give. Irvine giving up the fewest points per possession of any team in all of college basketball. Belmont, they have supplied 80 plus points in each of their last 5 games. I think that Irvine is going to be able to slow down this Belmont team, be able to wash away that loss that they had against Oregon State a few days ago. So, set Irvine is a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, and did set my total 148.5, also in on the under. 739, 740 on the betting board. Little Rock plays outside SIU Edwardsville. Edwardsville, a 4.5 point road underdog. Total this game, it is between 138.5 to a 139, and with Little Rock, I did set them as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Edwardsville. You do have someone in the backcourt that you know is going to be reliable, you know is going to be able to stuff the stat sheet in Rayshawn Taylor, who's been able to supply the team with 17 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists per game. Love his overall game, shooting 36.5% from 3-point range, but what this team leaves to be desired is a lot on the defensive side of things as well. Now, their 2-point shooting defense has actually been very good, and they've been able to force teams into right around about 14 or so turnovers per game, so there's been some moments of brightness there, but in terms of being able to guard the perimeter, that has been a big liability for them, and for this Little Rock team, even though they've been dealing with the injury to KK, their top scorer from a season ago. They've been able to get quite a bit out of a pair of transfers in Milwaukee Wilkerson, Jonathan Lawson. These two guys come up from the power conference level. They're combining for 30 points, north of 12 boards. Lawson has been that main facilitator with about 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game, and Wilkerson nearly 2.5 steals per game and a block and a half per contest. They combine to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range. I think that that's going to be very difficult for Edwardsville to take on. Now, Edwardsville, top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and Ring Malith has been able to give you about 6.5 or so rebounds per game, but it's all about what you're going to be able to get out of the ancillary pieces in the backcourt, because Taylor has been rock solid, and then you've got another Taylor, and Brian Taylor, who's going to give you 3 assists, 11.5 points per game, currently shooting 55% from 3-point range. That's going to calm down a little bit, but outside of, I would say, their main starting 4, their main starting 5, because they've been dealing with a few injuries. Kyle Thomas has played just once this year. You've got Joe Valeri, who's been able to see only 3 games thus far this season, but outside of your top 4 players, you've only got one other guy that's giving you north of 5 points per game. They do a relatively solid job by committee of giving you some rebounding. Arnes Sakinas, he comes on over as a 6'11" big man. He's been able to give the team right around about 5 or so rebounds per game, but that's you, Edwardsville. They're looking to play a little bit more slow. They're looking to play a little bit more under control, but have still given up 69 plus points in pretty much each of their last 3 games against Division I opponents. Meanwhile, Little Rock's starting to find their way with their offense. They've gotten to at least 69 very nice points in 3 of their last 4 games, and I do think that with Little Rock, they're going to do a nice job attacking from the outside. I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a control game. Little Rock, they are a team that they do play at quite a bit of a brisk pace. They are, in terms of total possessions per game, within the top 100 with that regard. As for Edwardsville, they're more around about 180th, but I just think that Edwardsville going to be a little bit inefficient against a Little Rock team that has been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the 3-point line, while they themselves outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So set my line at 6.5, willing to lay with Little Rock, and did set my total at 136.5. I'm also in on this total under 741, 742 on the betting board. Tennessee Tech, they're on the road against Lindenwood. Lindenwood, a 1.5 point favorite. The last game is 144, and I said Tennessee Tech as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to write this up, and I'm going to be willing to take Tennessee Tech outright on the money line. For Tennessee Tech, they leave a lot to be desired on the glass. They are outside the top 340 with regards to their rebound rate, but both of these teams very comparable on defense. You got Tennessee Tech covering right around about 306th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 304th for Lindenwood. And for Lindenwood, Markeith Browning, he comes in from UW Milwaukee. He's been able to give you a little bit of facilitation, but I just still don't know what's happened with Reggie Bass, because Reggie Bass was a starter over at Central Michigan a few seasons ago, saw some nice minutes over at Kent State last season as well. He's come in. I thought that he would be like their top scorer, if not their second top scorer, and he's given the team 8 points, about 3 assists per contest, and is shooting 30% from 3-point range. So that's been alarming for this team. Your main rebounder right now is Jadis Jones, who's a 6'5" freshman who's been able to deliver for the team about 6.5 or so rebounds per game, but he just don't have a lot on the post either to combat a team in Tennessee Tech that has been absolutely awful on the glass, as well as you got a guy that's able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, and Daniel Igbaniwe, who's been able to supply the team with about 12 points, a little bit over block per contest, but it's Ronnie Johnson doing it all for the team. 6 boards, 14 points, shooting 44% from 3-point range, and that's where I think that Tennessee Tech going to be able to win this game. They shoot as a collective north of 35% from 3-point range, top 125 team in all of college basketball in that regard, while this Lindenwood team, they continue to be outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And for Lindenwood, on top of them not being able to really shoot it from 3-point range themselves, they have not been able to guard the 3-point line as well. And for Tennessee Tech, they certainly have had their woes as well. So that should help out this Lindenwood team a touch as well. Tennessee Tech, they're allowing opponents to shoot right around about 32.7% from 3. That actually goes down to 31.2% when they've been on the road. Meanwhile, for this Lindenwood team, 321st in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so big issues there. And for Tennessee Tech, they keep things relatively clean with regards to the offense. Turn the ball over about 11.5 times per game. Jalen Johnson, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 12 points per game, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range while being able to generate 2 steals per game. I've been liking what I've been seeing there. You've got Ray Glasgow, who's been seeing a few more minutes recently because Makai Cameron, he's been dealing with a little bit of injury, but Cameron should be back for this this game as he has been sort of in and out of the fold, but he was able to play in that last game against Western Illinois, was able to deliver for the team, 7 points, 5 boards overall for the season, has been able to supply about 9 points per contest. We got a Tennessee Tech team that's been a little bit banged up, starting to get a bit more healthy now here down the stretch, while this Lindenwood team, they have been able to put up points recently, but it has all been against non-D1 teams. They have scored 80 plus points in 3 of their last 5 games, but they played 2 games against Division 1 teams, scored 61 points or fewer in both of those. Against non-D1 teams, they put up 80 plus in every one of those, and for this Lindenwood team against Division 1 competition, have only broken the 64-point plateau just twice this far this season. So did set a little bit of a lower total in this one. I did set my total out of 144.5. I do think that for Lindenwood, we're going to start to see a little bit of positivity for them. Right now, we're hovering between about a 144 to a 144.5. 144 is the max I'm willing to take an over on, but I would be willing to take a 144 over. And I do like this Tennessee Tech squad outright on the money line. 743, 744 on the betting board. Southeast Missouri State going to be playing us to Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois, an underdog of 5.5 points. So it's game between 137.5 to a 138, and is at Eastern Illinois as a 2-point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. I'm going to be writing this one up as well. Eastern Illinois, a top 125 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going up against a Southeast Missouri State team that they're quite a bit improved from a season ago. Like last year, it was just an absolute dumpster fire for them. They lost a lot of those guys that led them to that NCAA tournament appearance a few seasons ago, but for Southeast Missouri State, do have to wonder what they're going to be able to get outside of Teddy Washington Jr., who I do think is going to be the best player out there on the court. Comes in from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and he has been a dynamo for this team. 16 points, 6 boards, 3 assists, steal and a half per contest. Doesn't necessarily pop at the world's greatest from 3-point range, as Southeast Missouri State right now shooting as a collective just barely over 30% from 3-point range. BJ Ward, he's been able to shoot about 38% from 3, supplying the team with 11 points per game, but he has had a combined 16 points over the last 4 games, so it's a little bit suspect there. And outside of Washington, you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 3.8 rebounds per game. Just out a lot of size there. And Cooper Jacoby, I think, is going to be able to win that battle down low for Eastern Illinois. And I'm going to be writing up the points with Eastern Illinois for the write-up as well. But that's up for Jacoby. He's able to space out the floor as well at 6'7", shooting 35% from 3, 14.5 points, 9 boards, a steal per contest. So I've been loving what I've been seeing out of him. Double figures in each out of the last 5 games. So he's been relatively consistent on that front. Now for Eastern Washington, a little bit rudderless in terms of their facilitation as well. Turn the ball over 12.5 times per game, with Nikhil Shelton right now being your main facilitator with about 2.5 assists per game, because RT Stapleton, who is supposed to be the main point guard of this team, he's been out since Thanksgiving, so that's been earning them quite a bit. But along those lines as well in the backcourt, you've had Zion Fruster be able to step up in a big way as well. At least 8 points in each of the last 4 games, currently shooting 43% from 3-point. And it's the Eastern Illinois team that they shoot just 30.5% from 3, 62.5% the free throw line. That's been a little bit of an issue for them as well, but you've been able to have some ancillary production like Rodolfo Bolis, who's been able to give you 4 rebounds per game. These guys have been able to step up in a nice way. I do think that Eastern Illinois just has a little bit more depth than the Southeast Missouri State team, and for Southeast Missouri State, they've been able to do a solid job themselves of being able to generate some turnovers, but against D1 competition, 64 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Eastern Illinois, they're starting to be able to really hone it in with regards to their defense as well. They've given up 60 or fewer in 2 of their last 4 games. They held Butler to about 73 points. They pushed Northwestern to overtime when they were on the road a little bit earlier this year as well, so I really like what I'm seeing on this Eastern Illinois team. They've hung in there on the road all season long, and I do think that against the Southeast Missouri State team that is a bit top heavy, doesn't necessarily have a lot of size, that they find a way to get the job done. So going to be writing this one up. I'm going to take the points with regards to write up, but I personally am in on this Eastern Illinois money line. I did set my total at 138 as well. Here at a 138.5, as this is a total that's sticking up at the 138.5 in on the unders. I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to generate turnovers on one another. Both of these teams not shooting it well from 3, so in on that under, and also in on Eastern Illinois on the money line. 745, 746 on the betting board. Southern Indiana is going to be playing us to Tennessee State, and Tennessee State does find themselves as 3 to 3.5 point favorites. So it's game between 151 to 151.5, and for Tennessee State, I did set them as an underdog of 7.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay with Southern Indiana. Southern Indiana has been able to do a really nice job of just getting their offense going from 3-point range, as for Southern Indiana, that's really been their lifeblood going back to when they were at the D2 ranks, shooting 39% from the outside. Out of your top 5 scorers have made at least 1 3, every one of them shooting at least 42% from 3-point range. You've had a guy come in from VMI that's been able to help out the team as well down low, and Stephen Alawani, who's able to give you 15.6 boards per contest. He has not shot any threes thus far this season, so he is excluded from that. We've had a few injuries for the Southern Indiana team as well, but with Jared Washington coming back for the team, that should be able to help them out a little bit, as he's only been able to play in about 6 or so games as far this season, but He's been a 10.5 point per game scorer. Did miss their last game against a non-D1 school, but should be good to go in this one. And then for Tennessee State, it's been a team that just has not been disciplined. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of fouls committed on a per possession basis. And even though they do get to the free throw line quite often, they shoot 62.5% at the free throw line, and they're currently shooting 28.5% from three-point range. It's not even like they're doing an amazing job down low. Amir Langlis has been able to give the team 6.5 rebounds per game, and that's the way that you do want to knock off this Southern Indiana team. Other than Olawani, you really don't have a lot down low, but with this Tennessee State team as well, they do give up the three-point arc quite a bit as well. For Tennessee State, they are allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range 36.5% overall. On the road, that goes to 39.2%, 304th in all of college basketball. Southern Indiana, they're certainly going to give up their open looks as well, as they're allowing opponents to shoot about 33.5% from the outside, but I do think that with Tennessee State, even though you do have Brandon Weston, who's able to give you 18 points per game, Carlos Williams, who's come on over from Tulsa, about 11 points, 4 rebounds per game. You just don't have a lot from the outside to be able to knock this team off. The 15 turnovers per game, quite costly against a Southern Indiana team that they're not amazing with regards to generating turnovers, but they're above average with that regard. And I just look at the Southern Indiana team as being the much more complete team. So set my line at 7.5. This one might be making the write-up as well, as I do like Southern Indiana in this spot. And with this total, set mine at a 149.5 with the way that Southern Indiana shooting it from three, but Tennessee State, their sloppiness, I think costs you an over. So in on the under, and I'm going to lay with Southern Indiana, 747, 748 on the betting board. South Dakota is on the road against Utah Tech. Utah Tech is a 2 to 2.5 point home underdog. The last game between 162 to a 163. Set my total at a 161.5. So here at 162 plus, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the under. I just don't know if Utah Tech is able to do their part with regards to this total. They are well outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and have a unit that in general has been shooting less than 30% from three-point range. Beyond Riley, their top scorer, has been in and out of the fold as well. We have not seen him since December 3rd. He's unlikely to play in this game as well, which means that Noe Gonsalves, he's going to need to really run the show for the team. He's been able to give the team 13 points, CLF per contest, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. And Tennessee Rainwater has stepped up a little bit for the team with 8 points per contest. You've also been able to get about 8.5 points per game. Justin Beaker as well, who's been your main facilitator with about 2.5 assists per game. He and Akeem Bird combining for about 5 assists per game, but this South Dakota team, even though I'm not necessarily too keen on them, would like to see them shoot a little bit better from three-point range. They're shooting about 32.5% for three. Last year, that was more around 36.5% for three. I think as the season goes along, that number is going to be able to go northward, and they face off against a Utah Tech team that is allowing opponents to shoot about 35% from three-point range in their home game, so that's quite a bit of an issue. And for South Dakota, what else has been very glaring for them has been the fact that they don't necessarily have a lot of rebounding either, as right now, other than Cameron Fenns, a true 7-footer has been able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, and then you've got Bruns squared as Paul Bruns and Isaac Bruns. They've been able to combine for about 22 to 23 points per game for this unit, as Isaac Bruns has been your main scorer, give you about 13.5 points per contest. He's been able to shoot about 33% from three-point range, but he's the only of their top 5 scorers that shoots above 33% from three-point range. Again, I think that that's going to be going northward, especially against a Utah Valley team that's had a tough time being able to guard the three-point line. This has been a Utah Valley team that, against D1 competition, just has not been able to put the ball in the basket as well. For Utah Valley, against D1 opponents and D1 opponents only, they've been able to break the 71-point barrier just once thus far this season, so I did think that for South Dakota, they're going to be able to take it to them here, and I just think that Utah Tech doesn't do their part with regards to the total. I did set my total as a result at a 161.5. Here at the 162 plus, I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 5 with South Dakota. 749, 750 on the betting board. It's Merrimack, and the Merrymen are on the road against St. Mary's. St. Mary's a 20 to a 21.5 point favorite. The last game between 126.5 to a 127. Another game that I wrote up as I'm willing to take the points with Merrimack. I did set them as an 18.5 point underdog. I just believe that the amoeba zone that they play is just so difficult to prepare for. Merrimack not generating as many turnovers as they have in the past. Typically, this is a top 10 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. This year, they're hovering more around about 70th, but they do go up against the St. Mary's team that is outside the top 160 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home. It's not like this team has been some sort of a dynamo on offense. 72 points or fewer scored in 4 of their last 5 games, with the lone exception being an overtime game that they played against UTSA, and I don't think that they got to 72 plus in regulation there. Augustus Marcellinas has been solid, 6 assists, 14.5 points per game, but for St. Mary's, they're shooting 31.5% from 3, 67% at the free throw line. They do only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per game, but again, this team is outside the top 275 5. In terms of total possessions per game, Merrimack, they're outside the top 330 in terms of total possessions per game, and you've got a guy in Aaron Clark that's able to do it all. 5 assists, 2 steals, 4 boards, 21 points per game, shooting 37.5% from 3. Merrimack as a whole, they only shoot 30% from 3, but they seemingly always win the turnover battle because even though their turnovers forced per possession are a little bit down this year, they're also not turning the ball over themselves. They're only turning the ball over about 10 times per game. Devon Savage along with Sean Trumper, they've been able to combine for 18.5 points per game. It's nice ancillary pieces. They're going to lose that battle down low against the St. Mary's team that year in and year out, they're a top 30 team with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, as you've got once again Mitchell Saxon being able to give you about 7 to 7.5 rebounds per game along with Luke Barrett and Paulius Marasukis. He's been able to come in from Lithuania, 13.5 points, 8.5 boards, good versatility, as last year he actually shot at 6'8", north of 50% from 3, closer to about 32% thus far this season. Brian Entomino, though, on the flip side, though, for Merrimack, he's able to give you about 5 boards per contest. I do think that Merrimack going to be able to flow some good, clean offense. We saw them be able to hold in there against Stanford a few days ago. They lose that game by 6, and that is a Stanford team with a true 7-footer that's able to just really transform the game, and Maximine Reynaud, so they showed that against a bigger team, they're able to hold in there, and I do think that they're going to do so in this circumstance as well. So did set my total 124.5. I'm in on the under, as I do think that this is going to be a slow down slog again with the write-up. Taking the points with Merrimack, set them as an 18.5 point dog. This last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 751, 752. Long Beach State on the road against Pepperdine. Pepperdine is a 6.5 point favorite. Tonight's game, it is 140.5, and I did set this line at a 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Pepperdine. Long Beach State has been looking much more respectable ever since they played their first few games of Big West Conference play, but still, this is a bunch that's leaving a whole heck of a lot of something to be desired. They're still outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Long Beach State has actually been able to do a relatively okay job with their 3-point shooting percentage. They're shooting about 33.5% from 3, but north of 43% from 3 at home, less than 32% away from home. This has been a very different team when they've been at home rather than on the road. As you look at this Long Beach State team, when they hit the road in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're well outside the top 300 nationally. Meanwhile, when they do return home, they have been a much better unit, 329th overall if you're looking at home and road combined. But that said, for this Pepperdine unit, I do think that they're going to be seeing a little bit of a rise in terms of their 3-point shooting as they bring in Dave Schilling, that was a coach who was over on the East Coast for a very long time, and he's brought with him quite a few guys that have some versatility. I've been loving what I've been seeing out of the 6'8" combo player and Stefan Torvik. He began his career over at SMU in San Francisco, 19 points, 5.5 boards. At 6'8", he's shooting nearly 40% from 3-point with 16 plus points in 4 of the last 5 games. He's been relatively consistent for this unit. And Mo Odom, he's got an assist-to-turnover ratio that's right around about 3.5. He's given out north of 7 assists per game, shooting 42.5% from 3, 12 points per game. Now it's all about getting some of these guys like a Zion Bethea, Jackson Olvera, going against these two guys, combining for about 13 points per game. These two guys, they shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but just need to have them give you a little bit more volume in general. And for Pepperdine, they've actually been very good on the interior as well. They're a top 80 team in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, as Babakar Koulibaly along to Vidas Butka, hopefully I said that correctly. These two guys have been able to combine for about 13.5 or so rebounds per game, with Long Beach State. Devin Askew has been able to be a nice difference maker in the backcourt. He's able to give you 4.5 assists, 18 points, 4.5 boards. He's shooting 40% from 3-point range. The problem with Long Beach State is finding the guys that are able to support them and give them a little bit of help, as Austin Johnson has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game down low. Cam Denson, who comes in from the WCC, he's been able to give you about 5 boards, 6.5 points per game. And TJ Wainwright, he was a double-figure scorer over at Robert Morris. He's been able to slide the team with about 11 points per game. But again, this has been a Long Beach State team that has shot it well from 3-point range at home. That hasn't necessarily translated on the road. They've got a rebound rate that's about country average. They're able to do an okay job on the glass, but not getting a lot from the outside and having nearly 15 turnovers per game. I think it's going to be very costly. In this one, I did set my total at 139.5. As a result, Pepperdine has been pretty rock solid with their defense recently, so I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 7 with Pepperdine. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
We start with 306 599, 306 600. This game is being played out in the state of Connecticut. Alabama State and Norfolk State do battle. Norfolk State, 4.5 point favorites. Total game between 149 to 149.5. Said Norfolk State is just a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Alabama State. Alabama State has really done a nice job of being able to be much more efficient on the offensive side of things year in and year out. Typically, they're in the bottom 20 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. This year, they've been able to be a little bit closer to the league average. Now, they are allowing opponents to shoot 54.3% 43% on the interior. That's 260th in all of college basketball. And this Norfolk State team, they've been able to do a nice job with their guard play, but for Norfolk State, they have fallen well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are 297th on the interior, and that's big because Alabama State, they're very much looking to pound the interior. They're not necessarily a team that's going to be settling for a lot of three-point shots because they don't necessarily have a lot along the outside in terms of their shooting, but for Alabama State, what they do have is a guy that's able to do a bit of everything, as you've been able to have Amari Knox be able to give you about 15.5 points, serves in there 5 rebounds per game, and then TJ Madlock, who brings up the ball, 3.5 assists, 5.5 boards, 12.5 points. He's up to shooting about 33.5% from three-point range after last year. That was more around 20% from three-point range. Alabama State has been dealing with a few injuries, as I know that Madlock has dealt with a little bit of ailments. CJ Hines, he has been in and out of the fold as well, but Hines should be good to go in this one. He's averaging about 15 points per contest. He was able to get out there in that UT Martin game a few days ago, and then for Brian Moore Jr., he has been able to give this Norfolk State team quite a bit more, as he's supplying 18.5 points, shooting 58.5% from three, and Christian Ings is shooting 56% from three-point range. The rest of the teams, he's a fall off there, but overall, they're shooting about 36% from the outside, but you just don't have a lot down low with this team, as you've got Jelani Darden, who's able to give you about 4.5 to 5 boards per contest, along with Jalen Myers. You do have someone like a Tyrell Blayton, who's been in college for a very, very long time. He's able to give you about 4 boards per contest as well, but for Alabama State, I do think that they're going to do a good job along the interior. It's just all about being able to shut down this Norfolk State team from three-point range. And for Alabama State, right now in their overall three-point shooting percentage defense, they're about 35.7%. So Norfolk State should be able to get some quality looks, but Norfolk State, they themselves, they've been allowing opponents to shoot about 34% from three. They're about 200th with that regard. I think the Norfolk State, in the end, they find a way to get the job done, but with this team not necessarily being strong on the interior, I think that Alabama State gets plenty of points along the interior, and I think that Norfolk State ultimately wins this game from the outside, but I do think that it's going to be a nip and tuck game. Set my line at 2.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the 4.5, and with regards to total, set mine at a 150.5, so also in on the over. 306-601, 306-602. North Alabama is going to be playing us to Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern is a underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. It's game between 146 and 146.5. Set my line at 10. I don't really want to be going past the 9 to 9.5 that I'm seeing right now, but I'm going to be willing to lay the number with North Alabama. This team has been able to do a really nice job with their backcourt. They've been dealing with a few injuries down low, but still, you've been able to have a guy in Jakari Lane be able to supply the team with north of 15 points per contest, shooting well above 40% from three-point range this season, while being able to give out 3.6 assists per game. In North Alabama, keeping it very clean in terms of their overall possessions, only about 10.5 turnovers per game, while being able to generate 9 steals per game as well. They're doing all this with Dallas Howell being out for the last, we're going to call about 8 or so games. He's been a nice 5+ rebound per game guy, but the man that has been able to step up in his absence, be able to supply the team with 10.5 points, 8 rebounds per game, has been Cornelius Williams, who's been able to do a good job on the interior. And for North Alabama, I do expect a little bit more moving forward out of Daniel Ortiz. 2 seasons ago, he was this team's top scorer. He was averaging about 14.5 to 15 points per game, shooting 40% from 3, was over at UAB last season, and has yet to find his footing this season, shooting for just 32.5% from 3-point range, 9.5 points per game on a North Alabama team that overall, they shoot about 34.5% from the outside. You've got Will Sosi, who for his career has been north of 40% three-point shooter, only shooting about 15% this season, but I do think that that is going to be going upward as the season goes along. This Charleston Southern team still well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do have quite a bit down low with Tajay Kelly, giving 8 boards, 17 points per game, and overall it is a Charleston Southern team that has been able to get really nice contributions out of RJ Johnson in terms of dishing it out as well. 4.5 assists, 13 points per game, but where are you going to be able to get to be able to step up as more ancillary scorers, as Lamar Odom Jr. comes in from Drexel, only about 7.5 points per game. Dalen Berry, he's been able to do a solid job. He's able to give you about 4 assists, 11.5 points per game as a nice ancillary sort of piece in the backcourt, and 3+ assists each out of the last 5 games as well. But those 14 turnovers per game, a little bit costly against the North Alabama team that has been good at being able to generate those turnovers. And for the Charleston Southern team, defense very much leaky recently, 73+ points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games, and it's been a North Alabama team that's been able to tighten up as well. 74 points of fear allowed in each of their last 5 games. So did somebody total at a 146 here at the 146.5 in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 9.5 with North Alabama. 306-603, 306-604. Grambling is going to be playing host to Delaware State. Delaware State, a 7.5 to a 8-point underdog. Total on this game it is 141 after a 142. I believe that this is another one of those games that is a part of the HBCU Chris Paul challenge. And with this one, I did set Grambling as a 7.5 point favorite. So A+, that'll be my buy point on Delaware State. For Delaware State, this has been a up and down team thus far this season, but I do like what I'm seeing out of the main guy in Martez Robinson. He has been the setting force, being able to give the team 16 plus points. He's giving you about 6 boards, 2 assists, shoots 39% from 3-point range for a Delaware State team that overall they're shooting 36% from the outside, well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And you've got some guys with size, like you've got a guy that stands 6'10" that began his career over at Illinois State, and Alston Andrews, who's been able to give you about 5 or so rebounds per game. You've been able to have as well in the backcourt Kasim Watson be able to give you about 2 assists, 6 boards, 12.5 points per game. So some nice versatility there. And Corey Perkins, who was limited to just 3 games last season, double-figure amount of points, giving you north of 50% 3-point shooting as well. But for the Scrambling team, they have been one of the best teams from the outside in all of college basketball. They are shooting as a collective 40% from 3-point range. Now, it comes at the cost of a lot of turnovers. They've turned the ball over about 14 times per game, and I don't necessarily think that it's sustainable what they've been able to do with regards to that outside shooting, but they do bring in Ernest Ross from NC State. He's been able to give the team quite a bit down low, block and a half, 4 boards, 8 points per game, and then Amari Burnett. He's been a do-it-all guy, 6'5", 14 points per game, right now shooting 50% from 3-point range. Grambling, though, in a little bit of a nip and tuck game. They do shoot just 67% of the free throw line, which I find it a little bit hilarious, and have a team that does such a good job of shooting it from 3, and they can't shoot it at the free throw line, so go figure there in Grambling. With regards to their outside shooting defense, they're about 350th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Delaware State, meanwhile, they're about 267th, so both of these teams do allow quite a bit from 3-point range. Again, with Grambling, I do have a few question marks with the way that they're going to continue to be able to pop it from the outside. I do think that you're going to see a lot of turnovers in this game. Big reason why I did set my total at a 137.5, so you're at the 142 in on the under, and at A+, won't take those points with Delaware State. 36605, 36606. Middle Tennessee is going to be playing us at Lipscomb. Lipscomb a 1.5 to a 2-point dog, and your total on this game going to be getting it at a 147 to a 148. And Middle Tennessee I did set as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to write this one up as well. I'm going to lay the number. Now for Lipscomb, they've been a top 75 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that against a Middle Tennessee team that has been able to do a very rock solid job just overall of being able to win the turnover battle, having Justin Porter be able to give you 16 points per game, that's going to take it out of them just a little bit. For Middle Tennessee, Isam Mustafa as well has been able to give this team quite a bit down low. He's able to supply about 8.5 rebounds per game, while Torrey Ellison about 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Not really going to give you a lot of stretchability or anything like that, but this Middle Tennessee team is just very pesky. They don't turn the ball over very often, with only about 11.5 turnovers per game. And then on the Lipscomb side of things, Jacob Agnasovic, he has come back after he missed all last season, was their top scorer 2 seasons ago. He has been able to regain that mantle, 17.5 points, 7.5 boards, but last year Lipscomb was one of the better 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. They're shooting just 32.5% from 3-point range this season, and they're going up against a Middle Tennessee team that is not going to allow them a lot of good looks from 3-point range, as Middle Tennessee has been a top 40 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now, for Middle Tennessee, they themselves have been very hit or miss with regards to their 3-point shooting, as well as they're shooting right now 23% from 3-point range at home compared to 35% on the road. Do think that that should be going northward just a little bit. And then for this Lipscomb unit, they've been shooting just 31.5% for 3-point range when they've been on the road. You do expect a little bit more moving forward out of this backcourt, as Joe Anderson has been giving you just 7.5 points per game after last year. He shot 40% from 3 with about 8.5 points, 4.5 assists per game, so we've seen a little bit of a drop off there, but I do think that with this Lipscomb team not having a lot of size to match up with Isam Mustafa down low, he should be able to dominate this game and be able to lead Middle Tennessee to victory. A Middle Tennessee team that, by the way, they've really been able to ascend with their offense, 75 plus points in each of their last 4 games, while Lipscomb has held each of their last 5 opponents to fewer than 70 points, albeit against quite a bit of non-D1 competition. I do think that step up going to be big in this one, so I did set my total 145.5. I do think that the scoring is going to team down just a little bit, so in on the under, and I'm willing to write up Middle Tennessee laying this small number. 306-607, 306-608. Texas is going to be playing us in New Orleans. New Orleans, a 34.5 point underdog. So on this game is 149, and for Texas, made them a 33.5 point favorite. Here at the 34 plus, just barely, but I'm going to be willing to take the points with New Orleans. We've already seen New Orleans be able to cover against another team on the great state of Texas. They were able to get a cover against Baylor. They were down by like 40 points at one point in that game, so they were just barely able to get the cover, but they were able to get the cover. And for Texas, I do think that their offense is going to continue to ascend with Traymon Mark now in the fold after he was missing for the first few games of the season. Has yet to really find his sea legs, 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, but is shooting 40% from 3-point range. Texas as a whole, they're a top 20 team in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage at 40%. Turn the ball over just 9 times per game, and they should be able able to dominate this game down low. Chondell Weaver has been a nice find with regards to the way that he's been able to crash the boards. 6 rebounds per game. Caden Shedrick, not necessarily the most dominant rebounder in the world, but he gives you 2 blocks per game, while Arthur Kaluma, 14.5 points, 7.5 boards, shoots it well for 3-point range, but I think is going to keep New Orleans lively and within range to be able to cover this game is what you've been able to get out of Mr. White, as this guy comes in from UAB. He was also to begin his career Ole Miss as James White. He has been able to give you 19 points, 7.5 boards, shooting 38% for 3-point range, and it's big because after they lost Jordan Johnson from last year, who was a 20-plus point per game scorer, you had no idea who that main go-to guy was going to be. White has become that for this team, and then you've got someone like a Josh Short down low who's been able to give you about 4.5 boards, 11.5 points per game, also generates about 2 steals per game. This New Orleans team, above average team in terms of the turnovers per game that they generate, and each of their top 3 scorers have made at least 1 3, shooting at least 35.5% from 3, despite the fact that the team overall, they're shooting only about 31% from the outside. It is a Texas team that they've got quite a bit of size, but it's not like they're like towering with regards to their size. And I do think that being able to get about 6.5 boards, 8 points per contest out of MJ Thomas, who has really been able to emerge for this team recently, was an afterthought towards the beginning part of the season, but combined 30 points, 13 rebounds in the last 2 games. That's going to be just enough for this New Orleans team to be able to cover. New Orleans, year in and year out, top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. They should allow a lot of open looks at Texas as they are back outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to take 34 plus here with New Orleans. 3-6-6-09, 3-6-6-10. It is Wyoming, and they play as a Bellarmine. Bellarmine is a underdog of 15 points. Total on this game, going to be getting it between a 143 to a 144. Semi-line at 16.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Wyoming. Wyoming has been one of your better rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got on the flip side a team in Bellarmine that has not been doing a very good job on the glass, and for Bellarmine, it's all about the perimeter offense for them. They're shooting as collective about 37.5% from 3-point range when you account for non-D1 teams. Against just D1 teams, it's just a hair below 36% from 3-point range. Billy Smith, who comes in from Ball State, he's been able to give the team 13.5 points per game, and Ben Johnson, also about 13.5 points per contest as well. Both of these guys do give you about 2.5 assists per game. Dylan Branson, with 6'5" versatility, he's been able to dish it out as well. He's chipping in there about 8 points per game, but Jake Karnitsky is still out of the lineup for Bellarmine. He was a transfer from William & Mary that was able to give the team good versatility at 6'7", was supplying the team with 17 points per game, and with him out of the fold, that means that you currently have 3 players active that are averaging north of 5.5 points per game. That's a big issue. You could use a little bit more of the North Dakota State transfer, and Desmond McKinney, who's been dealing with a little bit of an injury of his own, and he might not be good to go in this game either. He was able to give the team a little bit over 2 assists per contest a season ago, and for Bellarmine, that has really been costly in the way that they've been running their offense as well. Now up to about 14 turnovers per game. That's an issue when you're also just giving it up the way that they are on the road. They are 354th in the country towards points allowed on a per possession basis. If you look at just games away from home, they're in the bottom 20 with this regard as well. And for Wyoming, the offense has not necessarily been the cleanest itself, as we've got Obi Igbem, who's been able to supply the team with about 18.5 points, 3.5 assists per game, but the 14 turnovers, that's been a bit costly. Wyoming, they shoot just 65% of the free throw line, but have good versatility out of Jordan Nesbitt, who's able to give you 9+ boards, 10+ points per game. Tuki Danamo, he's 6'9". He last year when he was over at Denver shot 40% from 3. That's only been about 22% this season. I do think that that's going to be going northward. And then Deontay Allen, I think that there's some nice versatility to be had here. He was at Western Kentucky and Kentucky to begin his career. And over at Western Kentucky the last 2 years, was averaging about 8.5 to 9 points per game, only about 5 points per contest this season. Has not found his footing with his Wyoming team. Do think that that is going to be moving forward. It's a Bellarmine team that plays very slow and controlled. Wyoming does not necessarily get out of sorts with their offense as well. And I do think that the sloppiness on both sides costs you an over. So set my total 140.5 in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Wyoming. I set them as a 16.5 point favorite, and we wrap things up with 306-611, 306-612. Grand Canyon is playing us to Chicago State. Chicago State a 29 to 29.5 point dog. Total on this game between 148 to 148.5. Set Grand Canyon as a 30.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. The crowd might not be as ruckus for this game because you do have a lot of kids. They're on break for Grand Canyon, but I do think that Operation Fade Chicago State is back on like Donkey Kong, as man, this is a team that's outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Jalen Forrest is the only guy on the team averaging north of 8.5 points per game. 9.3 points, 4.8 boards. He leads the team in both categories there. They shoot as collective 29% from 3. They're turning the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, and they are not doing a good job on defense either. As for the Chicago State team, in games that are played away from home, well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, outside the top 300 with that regard as well. Now, it is a Grand Canyon team that typically they're a pretty rock-solid defense, but we've seen quite a bit of a departure with that defense. They're well outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. and right around about 244th in opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. But this should be a team that should be able to absolutely decimate on the glass. Duke Brandon, ever since he's come back after he missed the first 4 or 5 games of the season, he's been able to supply the team with nearly 8 rebounds per game, and out of your top 6 scorers, all but one of them have been able to give you at least 4.2 rebounds per game. Locke War has been able to give you about 4.5 boards, 9 points per game. Tyon Grant Foster, he hasn't been what he was last season. Last year, he was giving you 20 plus points, 6 plus boards. He was much more efficient than shooting 15% from 3-point range. He was dealing with an injury to begin the season, and I have to wonder if that's still lingering a little bit. He has given the team a combined 22 points in the last 3 games. This just feels like it's a good get-right game for him, and now he's able to lean on Jacoby Coles to be able to pick up the slack for him as he's come in from TCU. 10 points are fear for him out in 4 of the last 5 games, but he's been consistent. I don't think that he scored fewer than 9 points in a game thus far this season. He's able to give you 5 boards at 6'8". He's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and for Grand Canyon, the 12.5 turnovers per game have been a little bit unsightly, but they've also been able to do a nice job of being able to generate live ball turnovers as well. They're getting about 10 steals per game. With the way that Chicago State has been all sorts of sloppy with the ball, they should be able to turn that into easy offense, and I do think that this is a spot where Grand Canyon is going to take out some frustrations on the Chicago State team, a Chicago State team that it's playing quite a bit more up-tempo than they have in past years. They're about 88th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but I just flat out don't think that they're going to be able to put the ball in the basket with the way that not been able to knock down shots. They've not been able to take care of the ball in general, so circumstance where I'm in on the under semi-total 142.5 and 108 to 30 with Grand Canyon, and that'll wrap things up for the Thursday edition of Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Soups, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger. Because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.